think go a little deeper than that because there's been a lot of damage done to that road by house construction.
Yes.
And people seem to be totally concerned about it. So I guess you can destroy the roads without any repercussions. And I don't think that's right. If you want to put it on for discussion, I'd love to talk about it.
Okay, I'll just point that out because a couple people did ask me. And
Yes, me too. I always seem not to care. So.
Okay, well, this agenda's getting twice as much stuff as we had on it ourselves.
You should ask us about the agenda.
I'll move we approve the agenda as amended.
Seconder, second discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried. There is no public input that I'm aware of. Is that correct? Well, they couldn't get in even if they were. Minutes of the previous meeting, June 2nd, errors or omissions.
I'll move to approve.
Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. Public presentations, I'm unaware of any. That brings us right down to what used to be the only thing on the agenda, pretty much, which is the quarterly report, Department of Infrastructure and Operations. Morning, Manny.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your kind attention once again. So I'm here today to give you a thorough update on where we are with infrastructure and operations in both branches. So that would be public works and solid waste. So we could go to the first slide, please, Tara.
Yeah. So share this.
Okay.
Are we still just on audio, by the way?
Nope, we're live.
Right.
We're live, but being recorded.
No, we're live on YouTube.
Oh, it's actually
It
live.
worked, it only delayed 1 minute.
Oh,
You might as well sure.
yeah, it
Take
doesn't
my
matter.
jacket off now and again.
So there's basically a couple of lines missing on the left here, but it's a fairly straightforward presentation. So in terms of the objectives, so I've been here for 116 days now.
Yeah.
And so time has flown, but it's also highlighted the level of work in which faces the group as a whole. So I'm wanting to share that with you today. So there is a project backlog, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which we have been employed to come and deal with and to expedite as quickly and as efficiently as we can. As an estimated sort of time that we can actually get through to the point where we are caught up in whatever that might mean. I'm anticipating about 3 years worth of work, just a solid catching up, just to catch up. That's all it is.
That's if we don't start anything new.
That's yes. So bear that in mind.
These projects that are already funded.
Well, I'll go through those as we.
Okay, we'll wait for you to give your presentation.
Yes. I have some instructions, so just bear with me.
I have a question. I'll wait a minute.
Well, I was going to say, if you wouldn't mind, just let me go through all of this, and any questions you have, we're perfectly happy to answer all and every single one of them. I'm joined by Fred and Krista, who's got sort of in-depth knowledge if I can't answer them directly. So if we don't, this will take 3 times as long as it already will. So just bear with us. So, the project backlog, as I say, we're anticipating about 3 years until we're able to say with any comfort that we are sort of up to date with things. In that meantime, part of that project, part of that timeline includes turning the infrastructure and operations group from a reactive group to a proactive. So because of the backlog and because of the history of sort of having a surfeit of staff members over the last couple of years, it's turned into a reactive department. It's complaint based. We go and fix things once people make us aware of it. It's very much in everybody's interest to try and turn that tank around so that we are sort of ahead of the game. That would be the ideal state. That's our game. We'll never be perfect on that, but it's certainly an ambition that we all have in the group. In order to do that, we're going to be putting in standard procedures, so it's going to be process driven. and employ best practices. There will be a constant scan of other jurisdictions or comparable jurisdictions within Canada and overseas, if applicable, so that we are doing the jobs in the correct fashion with the correct tools and the correct technology, so that we are, we can face the future with some confidence. Part of that is to do with data-driven recommendations. So it's gathering information, it's gathering metrics so that we can look at our assets. We know where they are, we know what condition they're in, what staffing, what qualifications, and a whole myriad of other aspects to that, so that we can make good recommendations for consideration by council, both this and in the future, with the knowledge that it's based on data and not just solely on sort of field knowledge or anecdotes or complaint based, as I mentioned. And also, I want to sort of stress to you that we're trying to clarify roles and responsibilities for everyone in our group. I'll go through that a little bit, but it just means that everybody knows their role within it and who everybody else comes to with a specific issue. So it's quite clear. Naturally, there's myself, Fred and Krista, who will be there to answer any sort of grey areas, and we will deal with that, but I'll share those, I'll share the specifics with you shortly. Just go to the next slide, please. Oh, that's the missing ones. I wanted to share with you the organizational chart within infrastructure and operations. So these are the positions. It's a mixture of hierarchical, but also mostly how people relate to one another. So for example, the custodian doesn't report to the administrative coordinator. However, their relationship is quite strong in terms of what, what instructions are given. So, so these are the numbers that we have. There's 21 people in the department as it stands at the moment. We can just move on to the next slide, please. I wanted to just remind people that whilst the positions are important, so are the people behind them. And we are currently in a very fortunate position that we only have one vacancy out of the landfill for a labourer. It's an important role because it looks after the litter picking and the general upkeep and housekeeping of the landfill, which is important for many reasons. But in terms of our staffing levels, we are pretty much at capacity, which bodes well for the future. So that's just a little sort of snippet of who's what and who does, who's who in the zoo. So roles and responsibilities. Lee Bessinger, who started with us in May. So his roles and responsibilities will primarily be with wastewater and buildings and structures. Next one, please. Tommy Bezanson will be looking after roads, vehicles and equipment and open space. Tammy Clark. So you're wondering who's Tammy Clark and why have we got 47 Tammys? So she's, because it seems to be popular. Tammy is the new administrative coordinator. She'll be joining us on the 2nd of August.
Okay.
So she'll be.
I don't remember her at all.
No, it's not you. It's this is new news. So she's the new Emily. So we're very fortunate to have her come from the province to join us with a whole wealth of experience, and it should be able to take that position forward. Then we're moving into sort of Krista Rafusu, who's obviously our solid waste guru, and Fred Wynott, who's the public works director, and then finally myself, who corrals everybody and tries to make things be bearable and get answers to people. So operation categories. So I've split and this is for the whole group, not just specific between the public works and solid waste. So split into seven categories. So the first one is roads, and very high level, and there is subsections within each, but there's the J-class roads, there's private roads, there's sidewalks, and SNIC, and SNIC is snow and ice control. It's just a shortened version. The second category is wastewater. And within that, we have the treatment plants, the lift stations, the pipes and manholes. We do understand that there's been discussion regarding water supply recently. And so that doesn't neatly fit under wastewater, but as we currently sit, wastewater is part of our portfolio, which we'll make those amendments as and when that section grows for supply. Third is buildings and structures. So that includes the admin buildings, the plant buildings, bridges, straight structures, and washrooms. Section 4 is the vehicles and equipment, and so that covers the trucks, skid steer, compactor, mowers, and hand tools. And it's a catch-all for a lot of other things. So things like green bins might be included in that because it's equipment of sorts. So like I say, that's sort of captures quite a lot of things. The fifth one is open space. And so we're looking at parks, trails, parking lots, and squares. Solid waste is sixth. That looks after the cells, compounds, ponds, and roads. And with solid waste, because it's quite self-contained, and so it does have roads within it, we're not having that as part of the roads as we would typically use them, because it's site-specific. They're being dealt with as an individual asset within the solid works group. And then the last one is administration. So within that, and this is again a very broad category, there are customer service, plans, schedules, strategies, budget, HR, and compliance. And that all feeds into general asset management, which also ties in neatly with all of the other 6 categories. So that's sort of a general overview for the portfolio. We move on to the Q1 report for solid waste. So these are the tonnage that the scale house for Q1. I won't go through them, but as a comparison to Q1 of 2021-22, there is an increase of just shy of 1,100 tons. Last 2021-2022 was a record year for the amount of waste taken to the landfill, and so I sort of tentatively suggest that with Q1s, or this Q1 being higher than last, we're probably in for another hefty intake down at the landfill. In terms of solid waste, wastewater, so we have leachate phase 2. So we're currently undertaking or revisiting the project rationale for that design work to be undertaken. So we're just essentially, crossing T's and dotting I's to make sure that recommendations being made to council for future approval are best practice, and so we're providing you with as good as recommendations as we can one way or another. CBCL is still retained for that design work, so that hasn't changed. Solid waste, buildings and structures. So cell 3B, we received the NSE approval to construct, and the construction has commenced with Dexter, and that commenced earlier on. They set the site up in the end of June, and they're actually starting construction as we speak. So that's good news. We're still anticipating that completion to be by Christmas this year. We do know that a project of this size, there may be delays, and so, but as it stands today, we're still anticipating December. Public drop-off sites. So the renovation of the metal structure there, quotes are being gathered, and the anticipated completion of that is by October this year. Moving on to vehicles and equipment at the landfill. So we currently are in quite desperate need for a new compactor. The current one is still functioning, but the hours on it are over and above what we would typically expect by someone. The staff, 4 staff members, including Krista, they went out and test drove a new type of compactor. So instead of the typical one with the 4 wheels, this has got 2 drums on either end. And the advantages to that is that it means there's less passes because the surface area is greater. The compaction rate is also
Steamroller.
it's a steamroller,
Yeah.
basically with teeth on the drums. The compaction rate is very good, and also the fuel efficiencies are looking very promising. So as a new potential vehicle, then that is something that that they wanted to go and test drive for themselves. And so they jumped on a plane and headed out to Calgary, all at the
Company paid for it.
oh yes,
Yes.
so any confusion there. It was all sort of it was a sales pitch, let's be honest, but nonetheless. But it was a very useful exercise. They got to test drive it in field conditions, and it was seen to be a very good option open to us, not only for the performance on the landfill itself, but in terms of maintenance and access to parts and the engine compartment. So that's currently with procurement, and so we will be presenting the request for decision for that in September this year. The half-ton truck, that's also with procurement, and to date, the green carts, we will be purchasing a further 250 green carts later in the summer, and to date, we have 228 carts delivered or repaired in Q1 of this year. Onto the solid waste administration, curbside garbage. So there's been some debate or complaints regarding garbage collection, and specifically around community garbage collection sites. So what we are doing, we will be looking at how these sites are dealt with, and processes to identify improvements. In truth, there probably won't be any sweeping changes because the process that's currently employed is a fairly robust one. However, we're looking to tweak it and refine it so that we are making slight improvements. What that looks at this stage is, I can't go into too much detail, but it's on our radar as a reasonably.
So you're not really, I just have something, because I don't get very many complaints about garbage pickup. So we're only talking about these ones in the parks and stuff like that.
It's, well, there's multiple houses, and for the garbage trucks can't get to them for curbside pickup. The residents have to take it to a site.
Specific, yes, okay.
And there's issues with illegal dumping and animal infiltration. The raccoons and rats get in at the back and all open, and they can be quite disgusting items at best.
Well, some at the end of private roads that, I've had them over the course of time.
Yeah. So I think it's just a good opportunity for us to revisit that, and just to see if there's any opportunities that we can make to make it better. That falls into the point I made earlier about customer service. The landfill B&E policy that was presented in June 22, so thank you for approving that. The environmental report, so that was submitted. The 2021-22 report was submitted to NSC. So that's an important piece that was completed as well in Q1. Landfill strategy. So we're looking at 15 to 20 year set of scenarios for the landfill that look at existing contracts that are coming up for renewal in the next short while, or in the next 10, 15 years, for example. Potential new contracts with neighbouring jurisdictions, potential for increase or decreased waste volumes, the cell and leachate capacity and longevity, the clay borough pit lifespan, workforce fields and equipment, capital operating costs, fee rates, and closure and post-closure rates. So we just think it's an opportune time for us to look at that. It's basically a good review of the entire operations, potential opportunities and threats, and to try and deal with it again. It's that idea of getting ahead of the curve. So we'll be obviously bringing that progress to you before the year's end. Just in terms of general maintenance out at the landfill, so the access road was graded in July. The groundwater sampling continues on a monthly basis. The biofilter is an ongoing maintenance. The deli clay cover for the cells is maintained. The corrals have been inspected in June. Maintenance of vehicles and equipment, household hazardous waste is packed daily, and the removal of CFCs is now completed on site by staff. So that concludes the solid waste report for Q1. Moving on to public works. So again, we have the public works stats, which are, I won't go through them as each one, but we're collating the historical stats just so that we've got an idea as to whether, particular requests or sort of metrics are in line with other years, or if there's particular spikes, so that we can address those and see if there's a problem, or if we're doing something right, and roll that out elsewhere. So hopefully I'll be able to share that with you in the next Q2 report. Okay, so this is the long bit. So so public works roads. So in terms of the active transportation, so the sidewalk design RFP awarded for the 4 sidewalks in Hubbards, Chester Basin and 2 in Chester Village. These have currently having archaeological survey done as per the federal request. And there's also public consultation being done because the designers illustrated that there may be encroachments onto adjacent lots. So we want to make sure that everybody is up to speed with what the work entails and if they have any issues. So that will delay that project. It's still within the timeline of the funding. So the anticipated construction is now being pushed to spring of next year. The remaining 7 of the 11 sidewalks that are on that list, they will be designed in-house. So that will save some time and money. Depending on how the consultation goes with the first 4, it may be that we can avoid some of it, or we've got a plan in place for successful consultation and streamline, so that it's a less onerous task. The rapid rectangular flashing beacons, so that's currently with the province, TIR as it used to be called, and the anticipated installation of those is October this year. Paved shoulders, again, that's with the province, that should be August of this year as the installation date for those. And speed radar signs, again, in collaboration with the province, that's another October installation. J-class roads, so the 3 that have been approved for upgrade this year: Myra Road, Adams Road, Brunswick Street. That construction again is towards the tail end of the early part of fall, I guess, or mid part October this year. And also the snow and ice control. So the contracts that were previously used, they had expired and had been sort of renewed on an annual basis. We're just at the point now where we've reviewed them, we're updating them, and we're making sure that they are out in August, so that we can award them in early September, just in case we get very early snowfall. We are sort of anticipating that will be up to 4 years, but it depends on other external factors such as service exchange. So we'll be nimble enough to be able to accommodate that. Public works wastewater, so the lift station force mains, the RFP was awarded in June of this year, and the design completed by the end of September. Construction is, however, subject to the approval from ICIP, but we will, as part of that ICIP funding mandate, they're asking for shovel-ready projects, of which this will absolutely be shovel-ready. As will the Chester wastewater treatment plant. So we are sort of working on those and getting everything in place so that we are ready when the funding, should the funding become available to us. Otter Point RFP closed recently. It's subject to PCAP funding, that's the Provincial Capital Assistance Programme. And so we're hoping to hear from that relatively soon, and penciled in for September being brought to council for discussion. Western Shore upgrade, wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So the quotes are being obtained for the new equipment there. Western Shore gravity system, quotes are being obtained for new infrastructure, and the work anticipated for August of this year. So there's movement on both of those. Chester Basin, quotes being obtained for the new infrastructure, the construction pending council approval. Milco biofilter, so that's currently on hold because it is compliant with the capacity that it currently has to accommodate, and the infrastructure in there. It's not a priority. It's quite capable of dealing with any demands on it. So we've put that on the back burner for the moment. It's not been forgotten about. It's just that other things have been brought forward. And then the Milco fire protection. So we'll be bringing a report back to council in September of this year, just to give you an update on where we are with that.
That deals with the fire hydrant sort of stuff.
That's the, so Fred, do you want to just speak to the
Yeah, that's what the fire hydrant system, the existing buildings, the water reservoirs,
Yeah.
and the system that goes to the school.
So, moving on to keeping with wastewater, manhole repairs. So inspections and repairs to commence in September, as will be the manhole infiltration reduction. The lift station panel upgrades and generators will also anticipated completion in September of this year. Water pumps. So there's been a water pump standing offer been put out. So that was been agreed in June, so that we have backup should any of the pumps fail. We're able to get them without any hesitation, so we won't disrupt service. And in terms of the EXP wastewater study, so a 5-year phasing plan begins to be presented in September of this year, just to keep you fully appraised of where we're at with that and what our plans are for the future. Buildings and structures with public works, Gold River Bridge. So the RFP is to be awarded in September of this year, and we're anticipating that 2023 for construction. Don't know whether that's going to be spring or summer as yet. The design will determine that, as will the capacity for any of the contractors, but there's movement there. The station bridge, we are looking to get the RFP awarded next year and 2024 for construction again, if that's a viable project. And again, we are at the mercy of costs associated with those, so that will no doubt have some further discussions on both elements, but we'll bring those to you as and when it's appropriate. Wild Rose accessible washrooms, so the trades have been employed, and we are anticipating an opening for those facilities in spring of 2023. And the admin building heat pump was completed in June. Harbour floats, so there was a new RFP awarded in May of this year, I believe, and they were installed in June. So we have 5 new fingers. And so we'll be constantly looking at that to see if there's any opportunities to provide additional harbour infrastructure for the recreational uses. We'll keep everyone informed as to progress our recommendations. Trailbridge repairs awarded in October of this year, and any deficiencies. So that's basically an assessment of the bridges along the trail system. And so any deficiencies will be included in the 2023 budget to be dealt with during that budget cycle, next year's budget cycle. And then we go on to the admin/annex audit or accessibility audit. So that was actually completed by an external agency this week. And
I saw him here yesterday.
Yeah, it was the freshly minted this audit was. So they told us that they will have that report to us end of August, early September. So we'll share those findings with the council as well. Vehicles and equipment. So there is currently a 3/4 ton truck with procurement for purchase. And so the tender we're hoping is awarded next month. And we are currently have a 0-turn mower, which is we're using standing offer software Canoe, which is essentially it pre-approves contractors in order to bypass lots of the procurement stages. Not that it's bypassing regulations, it's just a more efficient way of buying assets for the operations. And so we're hoping to have that delivery in October. Moving on to open space. So Hennebury Lake, there was a fish culvert passage that was installed. There were some issues in terms of fish access and egress from one side of the culvert to another. We've been dealing with the Department of the Environment on that, and so we're waiting their instructions of how to take this further. So that will be sooner rather than later, I imagine. Trail maintenance, so we are starting, well, the contractor's been employed, and we'll be starting the trail maintenance in August of this year. There was damage to a beach wall, and that's storm damage to a beach wall, and again, that will be dealt with in August of this year.
Is that Chester?
That's Meisner's.
Meisner's.
East Chester.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have been made aware of it, but we've had some issues with heavy equipment operators. So
We own that beach wall or something?
sorry,
We own the wall, or?
there's some. It's a provincial wall, isn't it?
Yeah,
But they've said, yeah, we're not going to do anything with it. So essentially, we can't not fix it.
and
It's
we have a kind of ramp attached to it that was
Oh,
also
we-
damaged, so we need it.
yeah.
Which one is it? It's in East River.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
one
so
year.
we hit a public access.
Yeah, I've got lots of already, some are already hate mail on that one, so
Yeah,
nice to get it fixed up.
yeah. So
I know we're supposed to be waiting, but just while we're there then, so what's the associated cost to us for that?
any ideas, Frank?
It should be less than 10,000.
Excellent.
Just some equipment time to pull it back in place, when we have to replace that ramp.
Well,
We'll know
worth
more once we can get the answers.
well worth that.
Yeah. So it's high profile, it's in the public eye, it's unsightly, and we recognise it needs to be fixed. It's unfortunate that we've had to wait till August, but it is definitely on our list of things to do. Horn property, so the access road and the parking lots have been completed, so they're ready for public use, and they're all wonderful. And the trail work is scheduled for October within the Horn property site. So public works, moving on to the administrative part. So going back to J-class roads. So we, in previous years, public works has presented to council a list of recommendations for roads to be submitted to the province. The criteria by which that was used was fine when it was first developed, but it did need updating. So we've done that. We've looked at how we can best include other metrics. So we've included roads that have bus routes on them, the number of residences on them. If there's any community services or amenities, community services such as recreation centres or libraries, schools. And then the actual condition of the road, which is a fundamental part of the assessment, but also if there's any home businesses, and also try and anticipate any other work, any sort of public works activity that the province might be undertaking. So we don't want to go in, suggest a road to be upgraded for it to be dug up the year after. So we're trying to coordinate it so it's just better managed all around.
So we haven't yet seen the new criteria.
No, this criteria will be used for this year's recommendations, and we'll be coming back in sort of September to council with a list of those roads, so that it can be discussed, but it will be using the new criteria.
sorry, I know I'm supposed to be waiting, but since you mentioned the criteria, we're right there.
Yep.
And I have the criteria from when we did it. The last one I had was October of 21, so it might have changed since then.
Mhm.
But, you know, it was well laid out and there were percentages also associated with that. So they're the same.
It's been, fundamentally, it's the same. We've added new categories, which weight things
Oh, yeah.
more appropriately. It has resulted in some of the roads, there's been a redo, the reset of the criteria applied to the same roads has meant that some roads have moved up simply because we're now looking at residences, and we've actually conducted a thorough survey of each of the roads, physically going out and assessing each road and applying our own assessment asset condition rating, so that we are saying that this is now a road that has moved up because it is worse than it was 2-3 years ago.
Moved up is not the problem, it's the people that have moved down that are going to be upset.
That is also a
We told a
consideration.
lot of people you're fifth, you're seventh, this is where you are. So anyway, we'll deal with that.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, I have some questions.
Yeah, no problem. We think, but yes, so we'll be.
Have both the criteria and the list in front
Yes.
of council for
Essentially.
review and decision.
Yeah.
That's-
So,
Get the criteria before we have to make a decision.
Oh,
Yeah, I think we should see the
Oh, yes.
criteria quick.
Yes.
yeah, no, happy to do that. No problem at all. The one small project, which I just wanted to highlight because it speaks very much to what I mentioned before about best practices and efficiencies and trying to move our group forward. Lee has identified an area within the wastewater treatment plant where some of the flow rates and the pump run times are being recorded manually, just on a sheet. It's been done forever. Every month it gets handed into the admin coordinator and it's typed in. So he's developed an app for the wastewater operator, so he can tap in the figures directly into an app. It's recorded digitally and it cuts out that middle stage of potential human error, human input error. If there are any flags, then because the wastewater operator is familiar with that, he'll know if something's not quite there. Whereas if it's been done by somebody who isn't as familiar with it, they're not going to be able to. If they input something incorrectly, there's a chance that it won't get caught. So we'll be running that as a trial just to see how it goes. But just as an illustration, there's little bits within our operations that we can streamline, we can digitize, we can try and remove a lot of potential user error or input error. And so we'll be rolling those out and sharing that with council as and when we have them. And also we'll be sharing the ones that don't work, you know, things that frankly, you know, it was a great idea, but it just didn't jive. And trail surface assessment criteria. So that will form part of the larger asset management plan, which I'll speak to in a moment. But we're looking to have a similar sort of set of criteria as I mentioned about the J-class roads, different surface, different sort of mode of transport, but it'll be along the same lines. There'll be multiple line items by which we rate the trail. What needs to be done, exactly prioritizing or triaging it. Traffic impact study. So it is currently still under review. We want to make sure that it makes sense to everybody, including our partners at the province. And as we wish to come back to council for a workshop in November of this year. Community wells, again, that's currently under review, and we'll be looking to come back again towards the end of the year just to share those findings and recommendations. And the wastewater treatment plants standard operating procedure manuals, that's again under review, and it's a fairly big job, and it's not terribly exciting. And with all the other bits and pieces that we have, it's not going to be completed until sort of the first quarter of next year anticipated, but it's on our radar. We are working on it.
Can I just ask, when you're doing these, when you the TP, why you put treatment plant, so some of us know exactly what you mean when we're doing it.
Because it couldn't fit on the screen. It was purely a practical bit. Well, you're quite right. I should have made that.
No, I'm just saying generally, it's not a criticism, it's just some of these things when you're reviewing them, I said, I wonder what they're talking about. TP.
No, I apologize. I should have used the full.
I apologize seriously.
No, but
Be
I,
helpful, some of the SOPs.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
some of us aren't in that world,
No, fair enough.
so
I should.
I'm sure Andre knew what it was.
Yeah. I've seen the TP so long that I know what it is too.
Small point, but make it easier moving on.
Completely agree. I will make sure that that is addressed in future. Capital, so we're wastewater capital charge. So we are currently collating information to establish a set of rates for capital water charges, and it will form part of the wastewater 5-year plan. But it is something as a standalone that we'll be bringing to council very shortly as for recommendations. So hold tight on that. Mentioned earlier about service exchange with the province, and once again we are collating information in anticipation of potential assets being transferred to us. That's not a guarantee that they will, but it's we're trying to get ahead of the curve. And if we don't get them, it's a good exercise for us to look at those assets and in isolation, and to see if we need to apply any specific plans or ideas or schedules to them. We're nearly there, I promise.
Yeah.
So
Stuff going on.
yeah, public works of staffing, as I mentioned, Lee started with us in May. Tammy starts in the 2nd, and I just wanted to thank council for allowing Pat Fisher to become a full-time permanent member of the field crew. So he's a valued member, and he's very much appreciative of his opportunity to stay with the municipality. So I want to share that thanks with you. A few other little side projects, because things are pretty quiet. Business development. So we help our colleagues over in business development with sidewalk patio applications when they come through. Provide technical advice for the Kaiser Meadows Industrial Park. We're also happy to provide in-house design support for the Parade Square. So we know there's many steps between that and the design phase, but like I say, we're ready to help when or if the time comes. And that is also true for any of our colleagues throughout the municipality. I've highlighted business development, but we work very closely with our colleagues in REC as well. So we're an internal contractor, consultants, and that's why we're here, and that's what we're happy to do. In terms of the administrative overall infrastructure and operations, so I mentioned earlier about asset management strategy. So this is just a plan to make sure that we look after our assets in a safe and sustainable manner. Preparation of that has been underway. It's a big project. A lot of it is field work. We need to know where things are, what condition they're in. Are they in the place that we thought they are? Loaded into our GIS system, and because geographically, it's a large area we look after. We've got to know what we have in order to manage it, and in order to make recommendations to council to move forward and to make sure that we provide that good customer service, because it's an important piece. It's prudent that we should do this correctly and take a little bit of time, and so I'm indicating that this is another year before that draft will come back and be presented to council for discussion.
So what do you mean by asset management strategy? Is that an asset management plan? What is it what is this?
Well, the asset management strategy is basically looking at all of the physical assets that we have, looking at the asset condition rating. So what kind of state they're in, their age, vehicles and equipment which have sort of whether the hours on them come up to the threshold where they need to be either traded in or just sold off or replaced. Putting them into categories so that we know the right people looking after them. So water-based assets, wastewater assets are looked after by Lee. Landfill assets are looked after by Krista and so on and so forth. So it's just basically having it's almost a laundry list of things that we have and making sure that they function in the way that we intend them to. And that
Well, I know what an asset management plan is. What I'm wondering is the intent for you to create an asset management plan, or is this a strategy for creating an asset management?
Well, so strategy and plan are interchangeable, so it will be a plan.
So did you want to make a plan for next year? That's good.
Yeah.
It's ambitious though.
It's ambitious. It will be a draft in a year's time,
Okay.
but that's our plan at the moment.
Yeah. Because with an asset management plan with any level of detail, it usually takes a massive, like if we're starting kind of from scratch, which we are, it takes a lot of work.
Oh, yes.
A ton.
Yeah.
Usually you have to get consultants, and there's consultants that just do that.
Yes, and it may be that we look at consultant help in order to move that along.
When you talk about asset, are you talking about land as well? We have a lot of land assets that I'm gonna ask to put on the agenda another time, not today, because I missed that in my note. But is that included?
If it's an asset that we look after, then yes, land assets would form part of this plan. They will be considered. Now, what those land assets would eventually do, that's when our planning partner, the planning department, would help us with determining that.
Yeah.
But the different types of land that we use will certainly be categorized, and we'll be discussing that with our colleagues.
To be clear, I think creating an asset management plan is good. I just, if you have a deep and thorough asset management plan, I'm concerned about your projected completion date. I think that's pretty ambitious, especially if you're going to do it in-house. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, point made, and we will, if it gets pushed back, you'll be the first to hear.
They're just trying.
We've got to try. We've got to start somewhere, and today's the day.
Isn't the asset management plan, isn't that all part of some federal funding program and stuff that we've had?
Well, there's tangible capital assets.
Well, that's
It's
more specific.
It's part of that family of assets. Understanding.
Well, some stuff.
Some of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, some of it's been complete.
Yeah. So, yes, that's the right slide. So,
The I&O's infrastructure and operations.
infrastructure and operations, yeah, council level. Yes.
Yes, I think
They're on the ball today.
that's learning.
Everything will be written long-handed from here on in.
No, I get it.
So it's in our interest as a group to have a strategy or a plan for the department. And so very broadly speaking, it will look at the people. And what I mean by that is the numbers that we have, the training that they have, the tickets, succession planning, that whole kind of people piece, the operations, what we do in the field, what's likely to become part of our work plans in the coming years, what we may need to drop off, what we may need to subcontract out to contractors, and then the governance and management of it. So that is part of the asset management piece, looking at technology to help us move forward and to record things. So very, very broad here, but it will be sort of focused in very soon. And again, I'm giving myself a year on that, but I know this is another ambitious timeline, but I'm throwing it down there just as a challenge to myself more than anything.
Well, we'll hold you to it.
Yeah.
Staffing review. So this it forms part of the strategy for our group, and it's independent of the personnel policy, which is currently being looked at by Gerald Walsh and Associates. But again, it's just that idea of we've got to, without the people, we're snooping.
They're going to be able to get to work.
We can't do it. And so, and it's making sure that we're being as good managers and partners to the staff so that they can come to us when help's needed, or they can make recommendations that they think will make an improvement to their operations or service to the public. Tender assessment criteria review. So we're aware that when we look at RFPs and tenders in general, and we're looking at the submissions, there isn't a hard and fast way of evaluating them. There isn't industry standard because each project is very different, not just within the municipality, but elsewhere. They're just so uniform, varied. We can't have a cookie cutter approach. Having said that, we are very keen to make sure that we have some guiding principles by which we apply with some movement when it comes to evaluating the tenders and the bids that come in. And so I think what would be prudent for us is to come to council prior to a bid being awarded and to discuss whether the evaluation criteria that we are recommending is acceptable to the group before we start.
That was what I was trying to get at the other time. I saw that, and I think that's so important. And I think we should be included.
Yes.
Setting the criteria and putting the percentages and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I like that.
If I may. I think, maybe there's a way to streamline it. For example, almost everything that you go out for, okay, well, first we'll separate tenders from proposals, because tenders are pretty easy. It's almost strictly monetary. And you have to satisfy certain criteria, of course, to bid insurance criteria or whatever, but those ones are easy. Because it's just whoever is lowest or whatever, if you meet the criteria and you can do the job, then you do the job. Proposals are more subjective. It'd be nice if when council is discussing the projects in the front, you may be able to then discuss what would be important at that time instead of bringing it back again. So if, for example, sidewalks are being discussed and it's this decision that we want to include that in our work for this upcoming fiscal year, then we might say, okay, and if we're going to award the design work, then we could have a brief discussion on what would be important to us then, rather than wasting or using council's time later than to come back and have another discussion afterwards. It seems like that would be cumbersome for staff and council. Personally, I think it wouldn't take long if you already have on your radar screen the things you suggest to council, because usually that's how it goes. It'd be an opportune time to say, these are the things, and if we're gonna have a proposal out for whatever,
this is what's important.
doing a big site survey of the landfill or something like that, and these are the criteria that we want to do this work, and this is what we think is important. Then that would form basis for your proposal, and then you could get it all done in one go. That's how I could see that rolling out. That'd be sort of simple and efficient, rather than being I don't think you want to. I think you want to have the chance to have that discussion, but you don't want it to become an encumbrance for your activities, your operational activities, where you're having to come back and, here's our RFP that we drafted up, and, what do you think of this? And, I don't think we want to, I think we want to be with you on a philosophical level. I don't know if we need to be right down there in the weeds, like checking your proposals before they go out the door. I think there has to be some acknowledgement that you're professionals.
Yeah.
Just as long as we're on the same page. If you're, for example, my famous example of sidewalks, you don't want to put a huge value on like experience and stuff like that, when that if you award the design of a sidewalk to any engineering firm in the province, they're just going to give it to their least experienced people to design because they're sidewalks. But if you're going to site a new treatment plant in Chester Basin, well, that's kind of a big deal. You want some guys that know what they're doing and have done a whole bunch of that stuff, and then team composition becomes important, but you could have a really brief discussion when you're outlining the project and setting that up about what would be important when you're selecting a consultant to do that job. And if council is agreeable to doing the job, then that would form basis for your proposal. That's how I would envision this going. I don't think we would want to be in the nuts and bolts, because that's not our
So that's
job.
what they're.
I agree.
Yeah.
Agree, yeah. Agree.
No, absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. We're getting close.
We're almost there.
Good thing we haven't asked any questions.
No.
Yeah, it'll be the first half. Last two pages, I should say. Bylaw reviews. So we're going to be looking at the bylaw reviews that specifically relate to our operations, making notes and recommendations for updates or inclusions. So when that comes to pass is to be determined, but it's another general review. And then landscape specifications. So, we do have some park type land, public open space that I think would be useful to have a set of standards in terms of, horticultural appropriate planting and sort of hard landscape design elements and some guidelines just to help us move forward. And so the very last one is you just move that on.
Active project.
It's just this is what we have. So I've highlighted the two kind of cyan ones. So they're the big capital projects. So we have 54 of those that are currently bubbling away at various stages of where they are at the moment and various complexities. And then we have 40 scheduled work. So that's stuff that often gets, forgotten about. It's not terribly sexy, but it's stuff that we just do as a day-to-day maintenance of our assets. So currently we're looking at a total of 94 active projects for our group, which is fairly healthy. And so I've managed to relay that to you, just that we are running at capacity at the moment. So with that, if you have any questions, we'd be delighted to take them.
Okay. It's a lot to cover.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So just the first, actually, my two questions are really easy because a lot of them, I didn't have a lot, but a few questions I had were answered as you worked through, so that was great. But on slide 9, you mentioned shade structures, and I will admit my ignorance on this. Can you identify?
So gazebos or bandstands.
Okay, gazebos and bandstands.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing too strange or startling.
Yeah, and we have how many shade structures then? The one down at Parade Square.
Parade Square.
Behind the Chester Basin Credit Union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are,
That might be,
Villages, or no, Heritage Society.
Heritage Society.
Yeah.
But it may be, we're not talking huge volumes.
No.
But again, it's putting something in place so that in the future, if there is appetite to have new shade structures put in, everything's in place.
One by the Tanko Ferry Wharf, is that provincial?
It's owned by an association, managed through the province.
Okay.
Okay, Ken?
okay, thank you, yeah, thank you. And also, the next slide, 2 slides down, it references parks, trails, parking lots, and squares. How many squares do we have?
Well, we have Parade Square, and I know there's the ownership of that does vary depending on
Sure.
which
Yeah.
bit you're standing on. So it's put in there just as a place markers
Absolutely.
that we
Yeah.
do have some interest in that particular site.
No, and I wasn't making fun when I asked that question.
No.
I was just curious, so thank you for that.
But again, if you're looking at the sort of, the growth of the municipalities and
Yeah.
sort of centralized areas for
Absolutely.
we could end up with more.
We could have more.
And also, actually, I'm gonna use your word terminology there with growth and opportunity. I was trying to do these in order as they came on the slides, but it really doesn't have, we don't have to reference a slide on this one, but it was slide 34, and you talked about harbor floats,
Mhm.
and that we have 5 new ones that we've approved this year in the budget. Of course, I'm here at the table, I'm aware of that. But your comments were that we're always looking or open for additional opportunities, and I'll use this word, I don't know if you said this or not, but for enhanced recreation use.
Yeah.
For the general good, and greater public interest and so on. So I appreciate that when it comes to recreation opportunities and maybe, not necessarily having that as an identified responsibility for us.
Mhm.
Again, investing money in additional harbor floats. And I will take that as a high level kind of motherhood involvement when we look ahead to this afternoon, when you're not here, but when we have our grants workshop.
Mhm.
Because again, it's about high level, enhanced recreation use and opportunities for investment. So
Mhm.
I just picked up on that today, so thank you very much for that. The pole mounted radar speed signs, I'll go into my emails because I know Tammy wonderfully sent out an email earlier this week, just wanting to know 2 locations for us for the mobile unit.
Yes.
Can I ask you, and I know that the anticipated installation is October
Mhm.
of this year, anticipated, so we don't control that, but anticipated with the province, for the pole mounted ones, has the list, the site placement list that Tammy collected from us back in May, been approved by DPW, not TIR, DPW.
Not yet, we're just waiting to hear back which ones are approved, and if they're not approved, we go to the next ones on the list.
Okay, so I will, thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Okay, is Sharon?
Yeah, I just had a comment. You talked about the curbside garbage collection and maybe some improvement for community sites. I have a problem in my area with one, the head of Larder Lake. It's a little bit complicated. I've tried to find a solution and still haven't. So if you're looking for a pilot project to maybe improve something, I'd be really want to work with you and see if we can come up with a
Yeah.
solution.
Not a problem. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
That one too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
it's ongoing. I know, like, one at Brown Road, they have a good solution. There are solutions, and I think
Yeah.
something could be done, but it might require, just a little bit of help. We tried everything, and I've exhausted all my,
It's important.
but it is important, the neighbors,
Be slow, man.
Yeah. No, it's important. Yeah.
the neighbors are complaining, and of course, we live in a rural area where there's raccoons and bears,
Yeah.
so it's an ongoing.
No, we're aware of the sensitivities regarding those sites.
So I have an ideal one if any time you would like to,
I will be in touch.
okay, thank you.
Adela?
I just have one question. We spoke about the J-class roads and the criteria. I just want to be clear. I thought that the J-class road list was given to us by TIR, Public Works, those list of roads. So I don't understand, like, are we gonna set the criteria? Is this a new criteria?
It's how we determine which ones are first on our list when we make the decision to send them.
Oh, so it's not, so it's still not, we use the TIR list. I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, just so I was clear with that. I wasn't sure how what we were gonna do was it gonna affect them, without them in the process. That clears it up.
It's the same list. It's just looking.
What we're looking at, how we
factors.
use it. Perfect.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lloyd?
Yeah.
And then Derek?
I'm all in favor of beach access and water access, because I have my area. My question is for East River Beach one, it's just a simple question, because once municipalities get involved, it seems like everyone likes to sue people.
Mm.
And because we don't own it and anything like that, and we're repairing it, looking after it, does that put any liability on us, or will we get insurance on that because it's our infrastructure, or what's that situation with that?
On the ramp or the actual wall itself?
Well, right now, the wall, we repair it, and if caves in, and someone breaks the 2 legs, are we responsible because we did the maintenance?
Quick answer is I don't know.
I think we need to find
But
out.
yes, it will be useful.
Which beach is this in here?
We should,
I know it's in here.
it'll be long one day.
Ours are
We do own a beach there.
But it's my understanding is that the wall itself is part of the road.
It's on the highway side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
We own a strip of land there
mm,
that constitutes the beach.
yeah,
I don't know, and I mean, I'm all in favor of walkways and all that stuff, but I just think we need to find that out.
yeah.
I think it's important.
Well, it's almost like we're taking over one of their assets for maintenance.
Yeah,
We
I-
can't put a ramp back without.
I get it, I understand why it had to be done,
No, I
but
understand.
it's a slippery one.
I walked on the ramp, I think it's great, but I just.
I have
I just
already fielded
question-
calls from elderly people that can't get to the beach
I think
anymore.
the short answer, you should do it well and do it safely.
Yeah, I know, it's hit hard. But anyway, I just.
Right, if somebody got hurt, they thought something was done negligently,
Mhm.
Yeah.
problems might get sued, we probably would.
So we'd probably all get sued,
We'd all
yeah,
get sued.
because some of the rocks that they put in place and some of them we replaced and put in place, and which one was the cause of the damage was done.
That's right, so the reality is,
Anymore.
anybody who's involved would get named, I mean,
Yeah.
where's the rule from?
That's
And
just
the
not-
court would sort it out.
So do it right when you do
Well, that's not always the answer. But the other one is just off the top of your head. Do you know what our annual trail maintenance cost is, or
I don't know, I can find out for you.
I'd just like to have an idea, just doesn't have to be exact, just ballpark.
Derek,
Thank you. Under active transportation, page 12, you talk about potential encroachment of the sidewalks on private lots.
Yes.
Can you give me more detail?
Fred, can I ask you to?
Yeah, just with the design to the current standards. There's some properties that are well below the road. So by the time we build up the sidewalk and the slopes of the embankments come down from the sidewalks, they're over the property lines. So we want to discuss it with the people, what their thoughts are, they're okay with that on their lawns, or do we have to look at retaining walls or easements or what?
And which ones are these? Which?
There's several, I don't, on each sidewalk, there's at least 2 to 3, so of the 4, so they're looking at all right now.
well, they always have somewhat of an impact on the.
Yeah, we just want to make sure everybody's on board with it, aware of the situation.
If it takes an extra
Well,
wheelbarrow.
if you're
grab.
encroaching, you do not get an easement from them.
Well, that's the
You wouldn't just
discussion.
get a verbal permission, you presumably get an easement.
Yeah, it's just that stage right now, I'm talking to everybody, make sure they understand the impacts,
Okay,
what they're up for and that, like,
Abdel, I'm gonna ask a question about Wild Rose, if that's all right, in your area.
What's that? I'm sorry, Jerry.
I'm gonna ask a question about the park over in your.
Oh, absolutely.
We're in a passing interest in that. New washrooms going up next year, is that? Who's maintaining them this year?
There's a porta potty there. Right now.
They're closed. and
They're closed to the public.
Been closed for a couple of years.
Yeah, okay, but the porta potty, I guess is what I'm talking about is.
We look after.
It's our annual, it's our contract.
So who looks after that?
Is that the contractor that we have?
We're a contract.
Yeah, via Flush, so.
So have you heard any complaints about that?
I haven't, I've heard that they wonder why the washroom's not open.
Yeah, but the porta potty itself.
I haven't heard anything, Derek, no.
I have, I just want to.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
you.
Yeah, because everybody uses the park, not just like from everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a destination kind of.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So, and like you say, we've been, but at least it's being, that it's, because we have to make it handicapped accessible and make those, it was a good time to do it. And I know it's not ideal. You got the nice park there and a porta potty. I get it. I walk there every day.
Yeah, and they can have a maintenance schedule be damned if somebody goes in and does
Well, that's
something
right.
stupid.
Is there a maintenance schedule? that
Yeah,
we-
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They, I'm not sure what it is or how often they go in there, but,
Just once a week?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go on day 7, I understand it's not. really-
I appreciate that, Derek, because like you say, everybody uses it. And it's, the park's been used the last couple of years, like, I've never seen it before. And you can tell the disparities there. It's, yeah.
Maybe not, may want to look at it, maybe think about it twice a week, maybe, or something, because it is well used.
Well, it is, it is, and I've talked to Krista about some other issues there, and we've seen to come to an agreement there, and it's working well, so.
Is that the same sort of thing you had down at Fox Point?
Yeah, same, we have them all over the
Yeah, but
place.
it's just once a week. You know.
Yeah, it's like they're all on the same
Volunteers,
schedule.
schedule?
Yeah.
Once a week.
Same as the one down by the ferry wharf. Oh,
It's well used though.
Oh, yeah, is that enough once a week for that? Have you tried it yourself?
Yes, I have, but
Okay.
maybe I got there on a good day. But it's, yeah, it's a big improvement because I had done.
well, that's right.
And I think, Derek, you bring up a good point, because obviously with the park being used so much, and of course the restaurant is next door. It might be actually something to look at for the summer months. That's the only time it's here, but at least for the rest of the summer, maybe.
Is the
It's probably
restaurant
40
open?
cars a day.
Washing the restaurant?
Yeah, no,
The
that's our
restaurant,
current
I don't know.
policy and contract.
Probably not.
Well, should, you know.
But there's so much, the park is being used like amazingly amount this last couple of years, so, but anyway,
Anyway, just on the raising.
absolutely, I agree, it's,
Just one other, Manny,
Yeah, just let Derek.
on solid waste and other, a number of times you say currently with procurement is, at what stage, is that with Canoe at this point, or is it still in your department?
It's
Say
with Dan Pittman to process through. So he's currently got that transition between the new e-procurement platform, which is again sort of a digital platform where people distributed to the contractors and then they reply. But there's some he's doing sort of the old way in sort of the more manual way that we did in the past. So when I say it's with procurement, it's down with Dan Pittman essentially.
Okay. That's it. Thanks, Mr. Warden.
Oh, yeah, Tina?
Certainly, just to piggyback on Derek's comments, and the discussion around the use of the porta potty with Wildrose Park and Fox Point Beach, etc. I think that we would have to recognize all of the porta potties.
That's the way it is.
And the fact is the past number of years that we've experienced with COVID, and we're in COVID, right? The experience that we had with people getting outside and using our, hidden gems, getting out and walking and doing what they can safely. So all of those properties, that's why I think we did take a really great look at increasing the number of porta potties placed.
This year.
We recognize that, and I'm really we are all thankful for that, because we are one municipality. But I think that we would have to really honestly say that each of those sites are triple in use, if you will. So thank
So
you.
we just have to take a look at our overall policy. That's the contract we have for this year.
I have one more quick question.
Yeah, okay.
I want to ask this first one for that, which is, you said at the start, 3 years of project to catch up on. What do you see as that having an impact on your department? Like,
Well, we're not going to take many holidays.
well, I know, but I mean, I guess on new projects, new things coming to the table, there's got to be a message there, a big message, I would think, if you're 3 years.
There's an awful lot to get through.
Yeah.
A lot of it. It's going to be tough. We've got the capacity to do it.
If we don't add too many more new projects.
Yes, and what new priorities come about? So, we will be sort of advising, we are no longer able to work as diligently on this project because this new one has superseded it. There's not a lot of wiggle room just now, but I think within 3 years from now, we'll be in a much better place to accommodate new projects as and when they manifest themselves.
One more quick question.
Okay.
On the floats. Who supervises their use?
bylaw enforcement officers' numbers there, if there's complaints, if there's not data supervision.
So what are the rules as far as how long you can float? Is that all posted there?
There's a
I know it was down, you and I went down, looked at them. Is there a sign saying how long you can use it? How long you leave your boat on the float?
Well, the tenders can stay.
Yeah, tenders can stay, right?
They're not supposed to be there
But there
overnight.
should be some rules on sizes and things like
It's
that.
listed in the policy, the verbiage for policy.
Yeah, but I think that sign would be good.
So I'm saying, is there anything posted there to tell people when they're done?
Well, you can't stay for over 24 hours, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess,
but for tenders and stuff, sometimes people bring pretty
Big
sizable
stuff.
boats that
Yeah,
aren't tenders.
they do, yeah.
We'll look at that.
That's
just curious, I mean, it's a great service. As long as it's not abused.
Mhm.
That's why I just wanted to know if supervising the use, or if we just sort of put it there and walk away.
At the moment, it's largely self-governing when we put them in and walk away and pick them up and,
The honor system.
Somebody will call you.
yeah.
People won't wait.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Okay, is that it, people?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
I'm gonna tell you to leave before anybody changes their mind.
Well, thank you all for your time, I appreciate it.
Okay. No, get out of here. No, you're all right. Yeah, I know, you've got to go, yeah. I thought it would be whatever. Okay, so I'm on to the new stuff.
Jesse.
Cancel meetings, we're talking about shutting down for the last 3 weeks of August, 3 weeks in August.
So
Yep, so, and actually, one more thing, so August 4th is supposed to be a cow meeting, we're suggesting that it be
Cancel.
a council meeting. So then there would be no meeting on the 11th, the 18th, or the 25th. And then I don't have it with me, but in September, there are 5 Thursdays. So
Yeah.
normally the middle one we would take off, which would be the 15th.
Yeah,
And the 22nd, I believe, would be a cow meeting. We're suggesting we flip those two because there are staff that will be
on
in
vacation.
Cape Breton, no, in Cape Breton at a conference.
Oh, okay.
So we're
Does anybody have
suggesting
a
that.
problem with any of that?
As long as you just send
Okay,
it.
so which one?
Well, I
Send it out.
need council approval to do that kind of stuff. Well, at least I sometimes.
And
I
we're
tell
taking up the
so.
15th, right?
Seconded,
Second.
discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried. And of course, obviously, if something of urgency comes up, then we change our minds.
Good, I'm on vacation that week.
Outdoor dining,
There was a letter circulated, well, I got a letter from the owner of the tavern explaining why he wasn't able to do his outdoor dining. I assume it was strictly transportation rules, the DOT and not
Yeah,
ours.
I wasn't copied on it, but my understanding, just in talking to staff, is that there's issues with approvals from transportation. So our bylaw references needing
you have to
approval from
have
transportation. And so that's the issue that we talk, I think it is around the issue we talked about with asking them for a setback from the corner intersection. And I think this might be the issue. We had suggested 3 meters, they had wanted 7, so it actually cuts down the number of seats that they're able to do, and it makes it not worth it for them. But it is with transportation and getting that approval.
Just trying to figure out how they can refuse that, but allow other vehicles to take up half the street. And I mean, who's enforcing this? Is this?
It's transportation's rules, so Department of Public Works, provincial.
I'd like to have the letter that came from, circulated so people can see. it.
Sure.
I'd like to
yeah, I
see
don't
if there's-
remember seeing it. I guess it came in an email. I can't do that.
Yeah, and I'd like to take a look at it and see, I don't just want to walk away from it. I think it's inconsistency in DOT's policies that I want to take a look at. Or it's allowing some vehicles to take up tremendous amounts of parking for days and days at a time. And we're talking now probably a couple of feet difference as far as setbacks are concerned.
Yeah,
Doesn't
so
make any
we'll
sense.
circulate the letter.
Yeah, I may have to get a copy of the letter. I don't have a copy of it, so.
Where has it been sent to? It wouldn't have been just sent to me. I don't think it was just, I'll find it.
Okay, street,
Chester Street.
You're doing the Main Street.
Karen.
Oh, that was just, I had a couple people comment on, and I don't know the name of the street, but it's where, pardon me?
Brunswick.
Yes,
I
where
believe
the
it's
old,
Brunswick.
where the old Baptist cemetery is.
oh yes, the graveyard street, that's right. I
Right,
just couldn't
and,
read my own writing.
You know, there's construction on that corner where it used to be a beautiful old home. Now it's a new modern home that, they damaged the road. And people are complaining that it's just not
I
fixed.
raised it 2 months ago, dismissed here, just it was not our problem. I'm not happy with that. I think it is our problem.
But I just want to bring it here because people were commenting on the condition of the road.
The street belongs to the province.
Except we're paying, that's our J-class road, the one, you know, we didn't have to pay that one because of the damage. We could put it somewhere else. So I think it is our issue.
Well, we can complain to the Department of Transportation,
We
it's difficult for us to enforce it. It's-
We can't enforce it, we know that, but I think we need to bring it to their attention. that This is a problem.
Well, if we can
We're
write,
we're ending up paying for it
But it
because
was,
it's one we're doing to share with our.
it was because of the construction, a lot of the damage,
Yeah.
the heavy equipment they were using.
yeah,
So a couple of years ago, we brought that forward as part of our agenda discussion with the quarterly TIR
of TIR.
meetings. And I know it was one meeting where Paul LaFleche at the time was here in attendance. And his comments were, and I know it was a workshop, so it was just us, if you will, his comments were around the residents and the construction and the damage caused by that. So we know that, sort
Yeah.
of check. Let's
Yeah.
not talk about that anymore. We know that, okay? Those are facts. But the question that we could ask them or push them on at that time would be is, where do you see your then level of responsibility or your role of responsibility, and have that question asked to them at our next quarterly TIR meeting, if people that are impacted by this are interested. I mean, I've got
We have
no-
one coming up.
I've got
in the near
no
future.
chips in the poker game myself on this, but because there's no J-class roads and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a
when it's
good question
September, I
for a
think-
quarterly meeting,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, and I mean, it's not my jurisdiction, it's just people,
No.
you're walking and people
Yeah.
comment to you,
But it came up before about this type of thing happening, but we never really firmed up an answer from them as to, well, so, like, what's gonna happen?
Do we have a quarterly meeting set yet? Dan?
So I know, so you saw the who does what in Manny's list, that's Tammy's the lead for roads. I think their local supervisor, Logan, has taken another position. So it's essential that our district supervisor attend our quarterly meeting, so
So Logan's not the area
Tammy's-
supervisor anymore.
that's my understanding, that there's been a change in the human resources, so I know that Tammy would want to have that meeting. It's what she understands is that we want to have that meeting as soon as we possibly can, and we want that meeting to be productive. So we can certainly add this road to the agenda and have a discussion with Public Works to understand if they have any practices or policies related to
Damaged by private sector people.
that's all, I mean, I don't
I
expect
see it
us
happen
to.
all the time.
Yeah, it would not be, this would not be unique circumstance. There would be lots of construction going on where equipment might. So we can certainly ask the province.
This was not minor damage, this was destroying the road.
Yeah,
I mean, serious damage.
Yeah, so I don't know what their practice is. I don't know if they would have baseline information on the condition of the road. Was it a road with, a 6-inch lift of asphalt that can withstand heavy equipment? Was it chip seal? What, I don't know what their practice is, so we can certainly ask them what their practice is. They may know what the pre-existing condition was, they may not. So I think it's for them to kind of share with us what.
Yeah, so I think we need to raise it.
So just as a comment too, we have had quarterly TIR meetings when we had, before Logan started, actually, there was an acting manager that zoomed in, I think, one of our meetings. And I think having the deputy minister in attendance is also very important. So I would say we could delay, and that position might not be filled. I'm just saying.
no, but we have basic schedule for the
Yeah.
quarter.
We do, yeah, we're behind, we know we're behind. I definitely want someone to attend from Public Works though, someone with the ability to answer questions and, so I know it's a high priority. So we'll have it schedule that meeting as quickly as we can with Public Works team members that are able to provide information and take new issues away with them.
I'm looking at my last email to Logan, it wasn't that long ago, so it must just be something very recent.
Yeah,
Wow.
we can certainly get you that information.
Oh, that's okay, yeah, no, I had the Saturday 10th actually from him.
And I mean, there's no point to waste everyone's time and have a meeting when their staff isn't up to speed.
No.
And they just come and say, well, can't answer that, don't know.
Deputy Minister.
Yeah, it needs to be.
Okay, that's it for the agenda,
Someone answer
people.
questions.
So I need a motion to go in camera. We have one item considering land, and I'm sorry, but I had to get you to go step outside for a sec.
So moved.
Get yourself a cup of coffee.
The scones and stuff over here too.
All those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. Okay, let's